today's video, we're going to be looking at my week 1 of the Lunch Meet Classic 10 tournament hosted by Johnny Pastrami on Tabletop Simulator. A 1 game a week type of event, so like the TTS League, but it's for 16 players. It lasts for a week with 1 undefeated at the end, and otherwise it's a traditional Swiss pairing. So I got the chance to be paired with redcathal, who's a pretty good player that I had never gotten the chance to play with before, so I was pretty excited for that. I was playing Weapon X for that tournament, and I was playing Shield. I've been messing around with Shield on and off. I really like them. They're really different from the other teams I like to play. They have a really different playstyle, which is pretty cool and unique. I'm going to be playing them in a big team tournament in Montreal in a few weeks, so I figured getting some practice in would be nice. So I went prio. I chose my extracts because we had really similar secures and our extracts were a bit more different. So we ended up on Mayor Fisk and Researcher, and he chose 15. I really like my 15 threats options with this team. I was pretty happy with the threat choice overall. I always run with like Bucky and Honey Badger, and then it depends on the extract, but in this case there wasn't anything relevant for the extract, so I didn't need the original Human Torch. Between Hawkeye, Ghost Spider, and Torch, depending on scenarios. Sometimes I'll also have to swap out Nick Sr. for one of the other ones, but here I didn't think Gwen would be really good into Weapon X because they're really good at diving deep. Didn't think that the web lines and all that would be that useful. The other thing that really drew me towards playing Hawkeye is this terrain piece. With the way it's set up, it gives a nice position for redcathal to hide behind and scored the Mayor Fisk on the first round. So that's an easy activation for him that I can at least partially punish by having Hawkeye and just shooting him. I was a bit surprised to see Red Skull here. I'm personally not a big fan of Red Skull in general, to be honest, so there's a bit of that. I think the grunts are amazing, but Red Skull himself, like, he hits like a truck, but he's kind of fragile, so if you don't have ways of protecting him or Malekith to just really like draw all of the attention away from him, find that he kind of like just dies really fast. He gets KO'd by like random attacks. Like 4 physical defense is not enough to be tanking a lot from my experience. The other interesting thing here is Red Skull is basically his model that's the easiest for me to daze or KO. Everyone else with Are You Sure You Want to Remember is tankier and Red Skull. So for his leader, redcathal chooses X23, which the more I've been playing with and against Weapon X, I think this makes sense because Logan has a tendency of being really like going deep, and he tends to go out in a blaze of glory, while X23 can weave in and out with her spender a bit easier, and they're about as durable one to the other, right? Like a little bit tankier for Logan, but not by much. Alright, so I did have prio, and when I have prio with this kind of setup in Shield, it's weird because I don't want to send anyone in the center. I don't really have anything relevant to do. One nice thing here, normally I use Advanced R&D to feed Eye in the Sky for Nick, but in this instance, I didn't need to do this because with all the objectives being in the center, I was pretty confident I'd be able to get an attack in with Nick and then just get the power. And whenever I have to do like a kind of like pass activation, I just go with Honey Badger because I don't want to send her to the center too early. I'm fine with keeping her more as like a sacrifice option early on. So here I'm debating who I R&D the power to, right? There's a few options. I can go to Hawkeye to give him Hook Arrow, but I mostly want to be able to ignore line of sight behind this building, so that's not going to be mattering as much. I'm always wondering, do I give it to Nick? Because that's the default play. I just use the power from Badger, give it to Nick, so that I have Eye in the Sky up on the following round. Guaranteed, so that I have all my defensive options ready, so that my opponent's first activation is less effective. But in this case, because of the objectives all being on the center, I am pretty certain that I can at some point move Nick forward and shoot someone that's going to be standing. I'm assuming here, but maybe over here. Unlikely on the other one, but that's what I'm assuming. So that means that if I can shoot and get a Fury special in, I don't need the R&D for the power. So then my best option probably just giving it to Winter Soldier so that he can either tactics and shoot twice on the first round, threatening those two objectives pretty heavily. And with Honey Badger being positioned here for the next round, she can easily threaten a ankle biter bomb into one of these objectives, especially that on the first round I'm not gonna score anything. My game plan is to send no one on the center because like we'll get to move both fists, so I'm probably moving them like probably something like this, forcing, and I'm assuming the researcher is gonna go over here, but we never know. That would be my fairest assumption because I'm never gonna be able to go after it after. And they could like probably babysit it with like the grunts. Using the R&D onto Bucky seems like the best option. There's always an argument for going with Nick Sr. to like then give it for siblings in arms, but that doesn't seem worth it here. Because same thing, Nick might just be able to move. So yeah, Honey Badger is often my kind of like pass activation. She's normally the one giving out the power with R&D because on the second round I don't necessarily aim for the taunt as much as just sacrifice and or just an ankle biter shot, like moving in range to get ankle biter off and then messing up someone. There I get to. He went with the safe play overall, which I do have at least some counter. So Domino goes behind the objective, behind the terrain within range of the objective. I do roll 2 wilds, which is massive, so I get to shock, and I'm considering poison, but bleed just seems more useful this early on. I still plan on basically chasing and killing everyone on the opponent's team. That's a pretty good start for me. I'm happy with this little trade so far. And now redcathal has to figure out what else he does about the meat grinder I've got in his face. No matter who he sends, it's gonna be taking some damage, almost no matter what. So the nice thing for him is with this terrain, he can send someone else within one of the objective and have cover. Sadly, with the way they place Domino, I still see X23 if I go right, because Domino went too much in the middle, otherwise he could have probably hit in both bases. Pretty neat for me. It's not like probably not gonna win or lose the game, but I do get a free shot with Nick Sr., which means that I'm gonna generate the power, maybe deal some damage. No damage, I get my power, so I'm pretty happy. At first I consider I wanted siblings in arms Nick, but then I realized I can always just move and get in range if I really want to generate that power. The Fury special to get Eye in the Sky up next round. And here Bucky with Hydra Tactics up and a good jump is pretty much threatening every objective, so no matter what redcathal does, I'm gonna be able to shoot him. Be pretty happy with this situation. Here I'm assuming that either the grunts go with Red Skull or Logan. I would have expected Logan to go first, personally, just because he's, I guess, tankier, but I guess that way you kind of like try to tempt me to go into the grunts maybe. So here with the angle from the terrain and whatnot, there are some situations where I'm not going to be able to, where Red Skull's going to have cover from the attacks from Bucky, which could be annoying, but I can Hydra Tactics onto the other side with the grunts. I've set up the Hydra Tactics off of Honey Badger, but I can always go with the grunts instead, and then end up on the other side of the board, where Nick, the two Nicks are, and as I'm measuring here, be able to shoot Red Skull without him having cover. And this is the kind of stuff that can be really good into Red Skull because, as I've mentioned earlier, the 4 defense dice, which, you know, 4 defense dice it's not super reliable for anything except take a beating. As you can see, I take a little bit of time to make sure I don't mess it up with the I want to be certain I have the right angle and that it doesn't have cover or anything, which here is gonna be perfect to get to shoot Red Skull. 1 wild, no rapid fire sadly. redcathal has 2 crits on his defense, so I'm kind of glad he just spiked when I rolled really bad. And I do get 2 crits on my follow-up shot, which gets me 4 successes and a rapid fire for 2 damage into Red Skull. Rapid fire also gets 4 successes. Thankfully redcathal got some good blocks overall, so he doesn't take, so he did block, you know, 4 damage, well 5 total, which is pretty good for him. thankfully. Like, but that's part of why those dice rolls are always a bit wild in MCP. You can roll good and so does your opponent, and then like you average out or roll a bit over or a bit under. It's always pretty wild. So just never expect anything, and you're never gonna be disappointed. I find when I play Shield especially, this comes down to the volume. You're just gonna be throwing out so many attacks during a game that some stuff's gonna spike, some stuff's gonna not work. Right, like I've missed a rapid fire, but the 2 other attacks rolled pretty well, so overall I got like some good damage in. The grunts are gonna do grunt stings and just spike like crazy, and these Red Skull classic grunts. They're often feels like the grunts are just like straight up the best models in this list. They just do so much work for what feels like a free thing. So I've got some interesting decisions with Nick. Would I rather expose myself more to towards X23 or Logan? At first glance, it might seem like going closer to Logan seems more dangerous, but at the same time, if we look at the rest of the map, right? Like, sure, opponent's Logan is over here, so he's pretty threatening, but the other models are on this side. So if I send Nick over here, I am in a safer position, right? Well, if I'm over here, there's a lot of incoming fire. While if I'm on the other side, especially, I can probably just be outside of tree of Red Skull. So if I'm outside of tree of Red Skull, Nick isn't too exposed, because you have a fine line to walk when you play Shield with Nick. You want him to be attacking because he's your best model to deal damage, especially with the grunts. Like, the grunts plus Nick activation is pretty insane in terms of damage output, but at the same time, if he's too exposed, then he just gets focused down, and if he gets focused down and he gets dazed and or KO'd, like, the daze isn't the end of the world, but once he's been dazed, he's always in danger. He's only got 5 health on his flip side, and if he's under pressure, then Eye in the Sky gets less effective. Logan blocks 10 on his 6 dice block, which is pretty good. Thankfully, you don't get anything more when you spike like crazy on defense, unlike offense, so defensive spikes are not as good as offensive ones, and that's why we often feel like at some point we get spiked off of the table, but we just forget those big defensive spikes that end up not really mattering. As I've mentioned earlier, I had the cleanup. It's 6-0 for my opponent. Good news for me, my leadership is going to be online for gaining victory points. I do get to move both witnesses more towards my side of the board and into more awkward positions for him. As for the researcher, I'm expecting it to go backsword so that Red Skull can maybe like run away on it or something. At least that's what I'm expecting, but instead redcathal goes for sending it towards my left side, which I find a bit surprising because it's kind of his weak side. At the same time, I guess he's got the grunts that are gonna be there easily. Logan can probably end up around there. And most of my models are also on the right side of the board and the same side as his, so I guess there's a certain logic there. But yeah, it's a bit surprising. It's not exactly what I expected, but it does mean it's easier for him to cover a lot of victory points while applying pressure. So Logan goes into Bucky. First shot, he's got no rerolls because he's close to his buddies, so I'm not super like scared about it. I just said it true, and I'm like, at worst I take a bit of damage. If I get dazed, it's really bad, but it's unlikely. Taking no damage is perfect for me. And then Logan goes into Hawkeye, because Hawkeye has the dossier, so that attack is extremely deadly. In between the dossier, which gives him a reroll any number, and his 2 rerolls and Pierce, I'm likely dazing if this connects. The good news is I can Eye in the Sky out, which I will immediately do. But that is exactly why with Shield you always want Eye in the Sky up for the round 2 if possible. At least for me, that's how I have success, is having Sacrifice and Eye in the Sky ready, so that round 2 I can always limit the first activation from my opponent, as I am normally wider than them, and I go from there. See, like here, Logan goes into Nick because he wants to place him to the objectives after, and that could be really bad for me if Nick dazes, so I just sacrifice into Honey Badger. He gets a pretty good roll, right, with 3 successes before reroll, 4 with Pierce, so Honey Badger takes 4, but she's alive, and that's all that matters for me, because that means that with that sacrifice, not only did I save Bucky from potentially dazing, would have survived. Sorry, Nick in this case. Nick would have survived, but I've now forced Logan within one of Honey Badger. Which means that Ankle Biter is online, and my Nick is still pretty safe. Full health, so I don't have to worry about anything. But here, the agents are in range to shoot Red Skull, but Red Skull isn't in range to attack Nick Yuri. Junior. So the agents go into Red Skull, deal a damage, so that means that Junior gets a power, and then the second shot also deal a damage, so I gain another power on Nick. So now Junior can go into Logan, which is pretty neat. So now I can go with a Fury special into him. I do get a damage through, which is nice. I also get power from my spender, lead from the front. So there's a reason why I'm going for the spender here. I want to create space in between me and my opponent, and as I've mentioned earlier, I'd be in range with X23 to spender the grunts. My goal is to move the agents onto the researcher this way, get some more damage into Logan with the spender, and the grunts attack. It's a good way of making exceptional healing really awkward, and it also gets me outside of the X23 attack range. Right here, my opponent realizes he hadn't done his power phase yet. But yeah, so now X23 no longer has anyone in range to attack. So that means that no matter who he activates, he has to move to do any kind of attacking, except Red Skull can strike the grunts. And I guess his grunts can also strike my grunts. But outside of that, everything else needs to move first, which is huge for me, because it means I've got plenty of breathing room, and that the amount of damage that my opponent is going to be able to deal this round is going to be pretty minimal. So he goes with Red Skull. I assume it's because he wants to Red Skull a bit into a less exposed spot, or maybe get to use him before he dazes. And the grunts have like a nice freebie into my agents, and then they move on to the objectives to contest. And then as for Red Skull, I really don't know what my opponent can do with him that doesn't just mean a death sentence for him. Like, I don't think he's got anywhere on the board that he can go that's really good. So yeah, not great. I think he makes a fine choice of retreating him, because the grunts are really, really useful for him. I'd argue, like I've said, right, like I find the grunts are better than Red Skull often, especially with the fact that they keep coming back alive. So he moves him backwards within 2 of Domino. So now he's in patch-up range, so that's always a way of like giving him a bit more breathing room, but he's also kind of like out of the fight, which I really like. And it gives me a window now to just clear his grunts, keep working onto Logan. My goal right now is just Logan. Right, this Logan is really isolated. All of those models are like in pretty bad positions, offensively speaking. And so is this Red Skull now. This Red Skull is also injured and almost dead. Well, almost halfway there, so pretty good for me. So we go with Nick Sr. With Siblings in Arms, I can get onto both objectives, which is pretty nice, so I can contest and then try to get rid of some of his models. I would rather daze Logan than go after the grunts, because if I can daze Logan, it means I can work on to KOing him next round. I do get 2 successes to 0 blocks, so Logan goes down, and I get to go into the troopers. Like, ideally, I'd still like to KO Red Skull this round, so even if I don't get the grunts, it doesn't matter as much, but getting them just gives me even more options. So here already, I'm feeling really good about the situation. So I end up spending power to move Nick. I want to get him onto the objectives also, because that way I am putting a lot of pressure onto him for stopping scoring, because right now I could potentially score 6 points this round if I really wanted to, and it's all kind of free. And as you can see, X23 needing to move first, and then now she can attack or do a spender. If she attacks, she needs to daze someone to get Frenzy off. So he goes for the spender into Honey Badger. I do have cover, so there's a small chance I live, but honestly, I don't really mind if she dazes. I block nothing, so she goes down. He does get to move after the attack is resolved, so he gets to do this before I do my gotcha backs. He does place in a way that I'll not be able to shoot her with Bucky, and Nick Sr. doesn't have the power anymore to do it. I do get to trigger my leadership, so I now have my first victory point of the game. It's now only 6-1, which is really good for me, because this round I'm going to be scoring a decent amount of points no matter what. So here Bucky goes Hydra Tactics off of Honey Badger, because you can do it on these models, so why not? And then we do it off of Nick Jr. I considered going, no, sorry, Nick Sr. Considered going off of Nick Jr., but I figured I'd like this position a bit better for next round. I'd be a bit further away from some of his other stuff, so I've got more with Rapid Fire. He's got a pretty decent block, so he takes 2 damage. So now Rapid Fire, which is going to be only a wild, well, only. That means he's bleeding now, so that's always going to be awkward. Now, before going for the second attack, I choose to go for, I'm considering going for Kick Him, which I will end up doing. It's something I often do. Bucky really likes rerolls, so even just one can be pretty huge. And if I can KO him right now, in between that shot and the rapid fire shot, then it means he cannot patch him up. And that's huge for me. So that's why I end up burning Kick Him. So I get him with the help of Kick Him. So now he's down a full model. I am still not in range of Domino for her to shoot me, which is pretty good for me. Anyway, she's shocked, so I'm not super worried about Domino as long as she is shocked. She is a monster when she's got 4, 5, 6, well, more 4 dice or more, but at 3 even Earth, she starts to be less dangerous. So the bleeding in Chuck Domino ends up double moving. So here, as you can see, I'm really up on attrition, but at the same time, if you look at it, in between the first and second round, my opponent has done 2 attacks with Logan, 1 attack with X23, and 1 attack with the grunt, so 4 attacks total. And I've done a lot. I've lost count, honestly, but I've done what, 1 with Nick, agents. I'm like at like 16 attacks ish, counting rapid fires. But yeah, so like 16 attacks to 3. So like attrition is going my way, which isn't super surprising. And here with Domino being forced to move again, trying to try to output scenario pressure, I'm in a really, really good spot. So here, while I was talking about this, Hawkeye with Okairo got to be onto the objectives, still shoot X23 twice, didn't deal any damage, but I got 2 wilds, which is kind of better, honestly, at this point. I mean, I'd rather deal a bunch of damage, but if I'm going to deal no damage, getting to shock and poison your opponent is pretty good, because that means that now X23 has no power and she's shocked and poisoned, so she isn't going to do too much in terms of damage. So the witness gets moved more towards the center, the one that I was scoring. I get to move the researcher. I'm also going to send it more towards, I want to set it close to that witness because I'm feeling pretty good. The only thing that can really mess me up, I guess, is maybe like a good Logan activation, but overall there's nothing too risky for me. I feel like I'm already in a really good place, right? I've got 1 injured model, but it's a 2 threat. My opponent has a injured Logan, shock bleeding Domino, shock poison X23, and Logan has been flipped. So I'm in a pretty good spot. Honey Badger is within 2 of Logan and X23. That means I can too dangerous to ignore their attacks. Hopefully blank them with exceptional healing for some really awkward stuff for my opponent, and then get a lot of value with like my leadership if she goes down. Get a bunch of got your backs. Speaking of which, redcathal chooses to go with X23 into Honey Badger, trying to just get rid of her, I guess. Rebuild some power for Expander to be able to move after. I do roll 3 blocks on the first shot, so I will take no damage. Second attack though is much better for him. I block 0, he gets a crit, and in between the crit and reroll he gets 3 successes, which is pretty annoying because that would leave me on 1 health, which even with exceptional is still pretty awkward, right? And be forced to like activate her to like be able to use exceptional, so I choose to just exceptional right away to give me some interesting options. But that is X23 doing both of her attacks, so now there's less danger going my way. There's still Logan, who's full of power, but doesn't worry me too much. I kind of want to go and attack Logan, but like I'm so ahead on attrition that like if I can just make sure that my opponent doesn't have a great round, I can really mess him up. So I choose to send Honey Badger in range of like Ankle Biter on Logan, Ankle Biter on X23, and in too dangerous to ignore range of Domino. Shake Bleed, heal myself for 1. So that kind of like forces his hand. a little bit. Now, if he wants to get a good Logan activation, he needs to go with Domino first. So he goes with Domino. She shoots X23, not X23. Honey Badger sadly blocks 0 on the first shot, and then he gets 2 successes on the follow-up, and I again block 0 and sadly go down. He did spend both actions to do this, as he as he went and shake the bleed first, not the bleed, sorry, the shock first to like meaningful attacks. So I still like basically, it still basically took both of his activations to get rid of her. And I get a bunch of gotcha backs and a leadership trigger. And if he failed, it would have been disastrous. So Bucky goes into Domino. I deal 2 damage, but no rapid fire. That leaves her on 1 and she's bleeding and she's out of action. So at first, unless my opponent uses patch up, she is going to daze, which I'm fine with. So he ends up using patch up with Logan. He spent, yeah, with Logan. So he heals her for 4. She then takes 1 from the bleed. And now it's back to being my turn. Like, I probably should have also done the one with Nick Sr. just to like deny that patch up window entirely, but I'm fine with him having it used, so now like it's one less tool in his toolkit. Also, just in general, I think patch up is not a good card for anyone that's using it. Maybe try other stuff. I just don't think it's good, generally speaking. So I go with Nick into Logan. I choose to do a tactical knife because if I spike and deal a bunch of damage, I can potentially summon the grunts, bleed from the front, and have all that fun stuff. Sadly, no damage gets through. I got a decent attack with 3 6. I got a pretty good shot by 3 success, but Logan blocked 3, so he gets also too aggressive, which is pretty good. Because now he's got a really good shot coming in. So now I go with a 3 special for the guaranteed power because I want to have Eye in the Sky available. And I go into Domino. Not that it really matters, I dealt no damage. Alright, so now Logan goes, does his big beam into everyone. He starts with Nick. I choose not to use Eye because I'm full health. He's got no reroll, so I figured I'd probably survive it and then be able to use Eye in the Sky. If I don't survive it, it means I get to do all of my gotcha backs, which is also fine. My goal is to KO Logan this round if possible, so every damage counts. So Bucky goes gotcha back because Nick of course got dazed. First shot deals 2 damage, second one deals none. Then the Nick Sr. gotcha back deals no damage, sadly. So I was hoping for more, but it's not the end of the world. I just hope he doesn't daze everyone. He goes into Nick Sr. and deals 3 damage, but doesn't daze him. In the end, I'm fine with that. Like, right now, Junior dazing isn't super important. I'd rather keep the other 2 alive if I would get to choose, which in this case I kind of do. So Bucky takes only 1 damage, which is really good for me. Could have been more, but yeah, I'll take it. And then he goes into Hawkeye. Hawkeye is a dossier, so I understand that, like, I guess he wants to go into Hawkeye because it's kind of like a almost guaranteed daze in between all of his rerolls and everything. Like, I block 1, but he's got like his reroll any. Doesn't even need the reroll 2. He dazes him, which is fine. I don't mind. So you're supposed to remove the 4 and put the 2 into place when you do this, but it's fine. Then I think I mentioned it, but you're not supposed to have the 4 out on Nick while placing an objective token. So I do my gotcha back, deal no damage, but land a bleed. It means that at the very least, Logan's gonna have, everything is said and done. After those 3 gotcha backs, Logan's gonna have 1 damage on him at the start of the, at the end of his round, sorry, of his activation. So now, the good news is I can easily attack Logan. I can like really drop the whole package into him. So got the power because of his beam on Nick Sr. to jump off of Winter Soldier with siblings in arms and then throw a grenade into Logan, which is going to incinerate him, and then after that I'll get another shot and then Bucky's going to be able to shoot him. So I'm hoping that in between all of those attacks and him being incinerated, I'll get through his hit points. If I don't, I might be in pretty deep trouble for next round, but odds are in my favor. So no damage with the grenade, but we go with the first big shot after. I get 4 successes. He's got 2 blocks, so he chooses not to burn exceptional, which is understandable. There's so many attacks coming in. I would probably not burn exceptional. on Logan at this point, unless there's like a really crazy one-shot spike, and then otherwise just try to grind it. 3 block 0 on the first shot from I finally get to put him down. I choose to shake the bleed, because at that point I feel like those little extra hit points might matter for next round. And I'm considering if I Hydra Tactics, but I figured I'd rather have Power for Got Your Back available. So I score 4, with Nick Sr. scoring the Witness and the Researcher, and he scores 2 from the other Witness. He sends the Witness to deal a damage to each of my models and to get a stun onto them. I do the same thing, stun his models and deal a damage to each, which can be pretty relevant because Domino is pretty low, and then I choose to send the Researcher a bit more backwards because I can just check with Akai where I could Okaro to, so that if needed you can just Okaro onto it to score it, like if everything else fails. And I've got still Eye in the Sky up because I get it back every round, so I'm assuming that I'm just hoping that with Eye in the Sky I can limit my opponent's first activation. So he goes with Domino, shoots Bucky, I choose to Eye in the Sky, and then he throws a grenade into Bucky, and I didn't really consider this because the explosive can really mess me up. I should have tried to maybe not be within 2 of Nick Sr., but it's not the end of the world either if he dazes, because then I'd get a Got Your Back, right? If he explosive dazes me, I get a Got Your Back trigger, so like it could, like there's some drawbacks to this. And now with his second action, he can either throw another grenade, but he dealt no damage, so now the odds of him dazing Bucky with the throw are not that high. Even if he dazes like Nick Sr., it's not great. So he goes into Nick Jr., which is understandable. If he gets to activate, I think I win the game by just spawning the agents and then doing 2 spenders and just throwing Laura probably. So first shot deals 2 damage, second one Domino does what Domino does, and she explodes Nick, which isn't super surprising. With only 1 action I was hoping that I could live, there was better odds, but it's not the end of the world. I get my Got Your Back. This is a thing with Shield. You often just like reach that point, you're like, you know what, I just got your back again, got your back, do more Got Your Backs always. First shot, no damage gets through, but rapid fire into 3 successes, dazing Domino. So now there's only X23 left, and X23 is in range of Nick Sr., which means that I can shoot a grenade into X23, which is going to deal a little bit of damage, 2 to be exact. Which, what is pretty massive here is because of the stun, she only goes up to 1 power, so I can still daze her without exceptional healing being a thing. So he goes for the Are You Sure You Want to Remember, but I get a spike going my way, which means that she is going to go down, and that is also going to be game. Had I not dazed her and just dealt like a damage, I could have used siblings and arms to run outside of range 3 of her so that she can't spender me to like make her life miserable, right? Like it would have ended up here, and then no one would have been within 3 of X23. And here I'm just finishing the old placement of my models to score everything. So that ends up 16 and 8 in my favor. I think this is a good showcase of how to use shield against someone that wants to really be in your face. A few small mistakes from my opponent that I got to leverage also helped, and I think the turn 0 was a bit in my favor. Red Skull not being great here. I think that was the biggest thing for me. Red Skull just not pulling any weight with him being so exposed. I would have probably personally went with Red Skull as the last activation of the round just so that he gets hit by less stuff. And then instead of dazing him on round 1, I leave him on like a few hit points because I still shoot him with Bucky, but not the agents and Nick. Nick would have had to move and like build a Fury special into Logan just to gain power. The agents would have like shot Logan, not really done anything, and then Bucky would have like shot Red Skull at the end of the round and dealt damage, but instead of being injured, he would have been really beat up, but still ulti. So that means that he could have started with Red Skull, put some pressure with him before he dazes, and go from there, which would have been a bit better for him. I think that's like the main mistake I can think of from his side. On my side, I don't think I've made, like, if I've made mistakes, there's nothing that really glaring that comes to mind. It's also easier when you win the game to not see mistakes. But in this case, I felt like I was really controlling overall the pacing. The only thing is, when I did the tactical knife into Logan, I'm not certain that was the right call. And with Honey Badger, after exceptional healing, she was still in range to taunt Logan and in range of ankle biter on him. So maybe going for the taunt on Domino was a bit greedy, but at the same time, I figured if I can just time walk him twice, well, time walk him, like the magic card, but just like gain a lot of momentum by just like forcing 2 activations to kill my 2 threat. I was so up on attrition that I figured that would be good enough, but maybe I should have been better off going like just activating Nick, or like the thing is I didn't like Bucky to like shoot Logan and try to like just brute force my way, but my issue was he could spend like, are you sure you want to remember like tokens, doesn't take damage, he gets out of the ankle biter range and taunt range, and that felt a bit more awkward potentially because he hadn't activated yet. Yeah, so the more I think about it, the more I'm convinced that I made the right call there. But yeah, I got to play to the strength of shields and just generate a billion attacks and eventually take out all of my opponent's models while creating just enough complicated defensive layers for him. It was really tricky to get more damage in than he wanted. So thanks for watching.